Hey pal, I'm a big fan of frogs and toads, and fortunately for me, there are plenty in Final Fantasy XIV. So, why don't I show off some of these lovely amphibians and give them the respect they deserve? Also, let me change into something a little more comfortable.
Nice.
When you first start playing Final Fantasy, you might notice a classic reusable enemy, also known as the giant toad. The model for this enemy is used all over Eorzea, across all different forms of content, likely due to having to remake the entire MMO after version 1.0 flopped so hard. It flopped almost as hard as one of these toads used their labored leap abilities to flop about, dealing damage. One of the most notable locations of this froggy enemy archetype is in the first room of the Aurum Vale. I ran this dungeon so much that I almost expect one of my DPS to accidentally aggro one of these frogs and be grabbed into the center of the room, aggroing all the other enemies within. All you can do is pray and hope that you kill enough enemies before your healer runs out of mana from casting Cure 2 15 times. These toads have some problems, but I'll forgive them as they are God's greatest amphibian. I'm not interested in those newts, and axolotls are overrated. Like, how can we get an axolotl mount before a single frog mount? And yes, technically, Iron Frog Mover is a frog mount, but it's a robot. I want an actual frog hopping about. It genuinely makes me upset, like, oh my god, why did this have to happen? Why the axolotl? God dang it. So, to calm myself down, I'll bring myself to the Nyx outside of Mordania. I remember all the way back when I was a sprout, and these frogs would bring me in for a hug every time I had to walk past this place or the MSQ. Reminds me of good times. Quick quiz. What job in Final Fantasy is the biggest aficionado of frogs and toads? The ninja, of course. No other job has the ability to summon a big frog to do their making. Just look at that frog go, breathing fire all over those enemies, burning the whole frog-hating world. Speaking of another frog lover, I gotta take my hat off for Master Montoya. He's decided to abandon the world of man to hang out with a bunch of funny frogs. And you can even get one of these frogs to repair your gear. I can imagine that frog smithing away, fixing all of my items. You can also do quests for these frogs, like with Sora Rogo, a nervous toad who's contemplating his life with Montoya, and is getting nervous that he'll be turned back into a normal toad. So you must help Sorrow out with his tasks, prove his usefulness to Montoya. He desperately seeks out for approval, only to find that there are no jobs he can do. And when he gives up and resigns himself turning back into a toad, Montoya gives him one last task, as Sorrow has always been one of her most loyal toads. That when she dies, for Sorrow Rogo to carry out the task of closing her crystal eye. Sorrow gladly accepts this request, finally seeing purpose in his life. How very touching. Let's not forget about the frogs of the first. The Frog are a fey race that inhabits the kingdom of Ilmeeg. They kind of remind me of characters from Ribbit King. Yeah, remember that game for the GameCube? Of course you did, because who hasn't heard of Ribbit King? Anyway, these frogs are quite precious and make me question why there's no Beast Tribe quests for them. They also have their own frog fantasy-themed dungeon, with finally 2 frog-themed bosses. A neck thorn is my frog Sona, and if you have a problem with that, you're just gonna have to go through my simple parkour course. Alright, maybe I'm a little too obsessed with frogs. Let me take my mind off things and start gathering. I guess I'll just pick up some more friends. Oh,